Call to order. Senator Risa Ontiveros will lead the chamber in prayer.
O Panginoon, salamat po para sa pagkakataong bumalik sa isang estilo ng pamumuhay na may higit na balanse at kalusugan. Salamat sa pagkakataong makipagkita sa mga kaibigan at ipagdiwang ang kanilang mga mahalagang karanasan sa buhay. Maraming salamat para sa mga pananalita sa mga kadiwa at kapwa manlalakbay at pagbubuo ng higit na malawak at matibay na pagkakaisa para sa mas makataong balangkas ng mga patakaran sa ating bansa. Lubos na pagpapasalamat para sa aming mga ina, para kay Inang Bayan, at para kay Inang Kalikasan, mga prinsipyong feminino na nagbibigay buhay sa ating mga pamilya, nagpapaalab sa kalooban at kamalayan ng sambayanan, at nagbibigay buhay sa sangnilikha. Naway sa papasok na linggo, mula sa lahat ng ito, humango kami ng lakas, tuwa, inspirasyon at gabay upang hamigin ang mga positibong enerhiya sa aming lipunan at bigyang daan ang isang mas makataong kinabukasan. Siya nawa.
The Senate Choir will lead us in the singing of the Philippine National Anthem. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zuberi, Senate President Pimentel.
With 17 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 80th session, Wednesday, May 10, 2017, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, we have guests of Senator Villar. Would like to welcome them to the Senate. Former Mayor Calix Katakis of San Pedro City, Laguna. Former Mayor Annabel Tangson of San Luis, Aurora. And visitors of Senator Ontiveros, Mr. Andrew Pelayo, and Ms. Ciara Bernice Gamba Pelayo. Would like to welcome them to the Senate, Mr. President.
Welcome to all of our guests.
To avail of the presence of the members of the Senate, I will move to proceed with the reference of business later, Mr. President. In the meantime, I move to consider for third reading Senate Bill 1365 under Committee Report number 45.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
May we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act extending the validity of the Philippine passports, amending for the purpose Section 10 of Republic Act number 8239, otherwise known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last May 9, 2017, thereby complying with the 3-day rule. I therefore move to vote on third and final reading, Senate Bill 1365 through a roll call vote.
The motion is for a roll call vote. Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary, please conduct the roll call vote.
Roll call vote of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Suveri, Senate President Pimentel.
With 18 affirmative votes, no negative votes, Senate Bill number 1365 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move to consider for third reading Senate Bill 1255 under Committee Report Number 12.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
May we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act expanding the coverage of exemptions from revealing the source of published news or information obtained in confidence by including journalists from broadcast, news agencies, and internet publications, amending for the purpose Section 1 of Republic Act Number 53 as amended by Republic Act Number 1477.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last May 10, 2017, and thereby complies with the 3-day rule. So I move to vote on third and final reading Senate Bill 1255 through a roll call vote.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Roll call vote of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Dinay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Suveri, Senate President.
With 18 affirmative votes, no negative vote, Senate Bill number 1255 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move to consider for third reading Senate Bill 1353 under Committee Report Number 40.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
May we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act increasing the penalties for the refusal of hospitals and medical clinics to administer appropriate initial medical treatment and support in emergency or serious cases, amending for the purpose Batas Pambansa bilang 702, otherwise known as an act prohibiting the demand of deposits or advance payments for the confinement or treatment of patients in hospitals and medical clinics in certain cases as amended by Republic Act Number 8344 and for other purposes.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last May 10, 2017, thereby complying with the 3-day rule. I therefore move to vote on third and final reading Senate Bill 1353 through a roll call vote.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary, please conduct the roll call vote.
Roll call vote of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Suveri, Senate President Pimentel.
With 18 affirmative votes and no negative votes, Senate Bill number 1353 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move to consider for third reading House Bill 937.
Majority Leader, Senator Senator Ontiveros is
May recognize
recognized.
Senator Ontiveros before the next motion, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader. Wala nang mahihirap na itataboy sa ospital. Wala nang pamilyang mamumulubi sa pagpapagamot. This was my campaign promise when I ran in 2016. But this was more than a campaign promise to me. It was a personal commitment born of story after story of Filipinos denied access to emergency medical services simply because they could not immediately pay the hospital deposit. Si Mrs. na makukunan, si tatay na inatake sa puso, si bunso na nagsusuka sa di malaman-laman na dahilan. May mga mukha at pangalan ang mga kwentong ito ng pagtataboy sa ospital. Kasama na dito ang mag-asawang Andrew at Ciara Pelayo na namatayan ng anak dahil tinaboy sila ng private hospital na kanilang tinakbuhan. Nagagalak ako na nandito sila ngayong araw, Mr. President. It's for them and for those similarly situated that this bill was crafted. Indeed, Mr. President, we have come one step closer today to our vision of universal health. The House of Representatives has already passed their version of this bill. As principal author and principal sponsor, I thank my co-sponsors, Senator Soto, Pimentel, Drilon, and Gordon, and the chair of the Committee on Health and Demography, Senator J.V. Ejercito, for their earnest support. Mabuhay ang Senado, mabuhay ang Sambayanan.
Thank you, Senator Ontiveros. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to consider for third reading House Bill 937 under Committee Report Number 47.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
May we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure, favorites of the Minority Leader, Mr. President?
An act dividing Barangay North Bay Boulevard South in the city of Navotas into three distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangay NBBS proper, Barangay NBBS Kaunlaran, and Barangay NBBS Dagat-Dagatan.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last May 11, 2017, and we made sure that the office of the Minority Leader was given a copy, Mr. President, thereby complying with the three-day rule. I therefore move to vote on third and final reading House Bill 937 through a roll call vote.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary, please conduct the roll call vote.
Roll call vote of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano de Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Monteveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soberi, Senate President Pimentel.
Sino nawala? With 18 affirmative votes, no negative vote, House Bill number 937 is approved on third reading. Majority
Thank you,
Leader.
Mr. President. I move to consider for third reading House Bill 938 under Committee Report Number 49.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Secretary, please read the title.
An act dividing Barangay Tangos in the city of Navotas into two distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangays Tangos North and Tangos South.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last May 11, 2017, thereby complying with the three-day rule. I therefore move to vote on third and final reading House Bill 938 through a roll call vote.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary, please conduct the vote.
Roll call vote of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soberi, Senate President Pimentel.
With 18 affirmative votes, no negative vote, House Bill number 938 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move to consider for third reading House Bill 4402 under Committee Report Number 50.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
May the Secretary read the title
Secretary,
of the
please
measure?
do so.
An act dividing Barangay Tansa in the city of Navotas into two distinct and independent barangays to be known as Barangay Tansa 1 and Barangay Tansa 2.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last May 11. Thereby complying with the 3-day rule, I therefore move to vote in third and final reading House Bill 4402 through a roll call vote.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Secretary, please conduct the voting.
Roll call vote of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano de Lima, De Rilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Hontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soveri, Senate President Pimentel.
With 18 affirmative votes, no negative vote, House Bill number 4402 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, before I move for the reference of business, may I move for a 1-minute suspension to allow the members of the Senate to greet Senator Nancy Binay. Have a very happy birthday, Mr. President.
Session is suspended. Oo nga pala. Ngayon pa lang pala i-refer siya sa ano, hold.
Kinabahan na si Dito Brock. Dito Brock kinabahan. Kanina Golden State ang kwentuhan dito. Golden State ba siya? Golden State. Golden State. Sabi ko kinabahan. Mario tayo Golden State. Hindi, tinambakan tayo ng 23 points. Pag 25 na. Sabi ko, delikado na. Third quarter, diba? Third quarter, tambak tayo.
Ganyan pa nung start eh. Sabi ko sa'yo. This is a breeze.
Go. 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 Winnie.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, in connection to the just approved Senate Bill 1365, I move to elect the following Senate contingent to the BICAM Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 1365 and House Bill 4767, or the measure extending the validity of Philippine passports. I move to elect Senator Cynthia Villar as the chair and members Villanueva, Gordon, Subiri, and Aquino IV.
Any objection? There being none, the said members are so elected.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Any objection? Irina, motion is approved.
With my consent, I don't know about it.
Secretary, let us do the reference of business.
Bills of first reading. 1448, an act authorizing the court to require community service in lieu of detention for the penalty of arresto minor, amending for the purpose Chapter 5, Title 3, Book 1 of Act Number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code, by Senator Sani Angara.
Referred to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
1450, an act to reform the budget process by enforcing greater accountability in public financial management, promoting fiscal sustainability, instituting an integrated PFM system, increasing budget transparency and participation, and for other purposes. Senator Ligarda.
To the Committee on Finance.
Resolutions. 371, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the state of agricultural mechanization of the country and the implementation of the agricultural mechanization law, and for other purposes, by Senator Cynthia Villar.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
372, resolution commending and congratulating Senator Juan Miguel Miggs F. Soberi for his appointment as the chairman of the 2019 Philippine Sea Games Organizing Committee, by Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
To the Committee on Rules.
373, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Blue Ribbon, to conduct an inquiry and comprehensive investigation in aid of legislation on the procurement of the 21 UH-1H refurbished helicopters and the alleged irregularities in line with the modernization of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, National Defense and Security, and Finance.
374, resolution directing the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Blue Ribbon, to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the possible malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance of the Commission on Elections in the implementation of election laws, Senator Richard Gordon.
To the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, and Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
375, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Services to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the Land, Transportation, and Franchise Regulatory Board's Driver's Badge Program, by Senator Grace Poe.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Communications, letter from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas submitting to the Senate a copy of data on outstanding Philippine external debt as of 31 December 2016, which were noted by the Monetary Board on 16 March 2017.
To the Committees on Economic Affairs and Finance.
Letter from the Philippine National Police submitting to the Senate the quarterly accomplishment report for the fourth quarter of 2016 on confidential and intelligence activities of the PNP, PRO 5, as required under Republic Act number 10717, General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2016.
To the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
Letter from the Public-Private Partnership Center submitting to the Senate the design, build, transfer, operate agreement for the Tanawan City of Public Market Redevelopment Project dated 21 April 2016 between the City Government of Tanawan and Guru Property Management and Development Corporation pursuant to Republic Act number 6957 as amended.
To the Committee on Public Works.
Letter from the Department of Social Welfare and Development submitting to the Senate the list of the Pantawid Pamilya Program beneficiaries as of December 2016 and Pantawid Pamilya Program's fourth quarter accomplishment report for calendar year 2016 in compliance with Republic Act number 10924 or the General Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2017, particularly the special provision on the conditional cash transfer program.
To the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development.
Letter from Roy Cecil D. Ibay dated 24 April 2017 submitting to the Senate the 2016 annual report of Digitel Mobile Philippines Incorporated in compliance with Republic Act number 9180.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Letter from Attorney Enrico L. Espanyol submitting to the Senate the 2016 annual reports of the following: Smart Communications Incorporated, Smart Broadband Incorporated in compliance with Republic Act number 8337, Connectivity Unlimited Resource Enterprise Incorporated in compliance with Republic Act number 9130, and Primor Digital System Incorporated in compliance with Republic Act number 8992.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Committee reports. Number 62, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Public Services on Senate Bill number 1449 with Senators Recto, Gordon, Ejercito, Villanueva as authors thereof, entitled An Act Extending the Validity Period of Driver's Licenses. Amending for that purpose Section 23 of Republic Act number 4136 as amended by Batas Bilang 398 and Executive Order number 1011, otherwise known as the Land Transportation and Traffic Code, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill numbers 271, 941, and 1224. Senator Grace Poe.
To the Calendar for Ordinary Business.
6.3, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4848, introduced by Representative Pimentel, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the City of Bislig, Province of Surigao del Sur, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment. Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 64, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4850, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Lopez, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment. Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 65, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4851, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Atimonan, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment. Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 66, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4852, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Gumaca, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment. Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 67, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4853 introduced by Representative Pimentel entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Barubo, Province of Surigao del Sur, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 68, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4854, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Tagkawayan, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 69, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4855, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Quezon, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 70, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4856, introduced by Representative Pimentel, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Hinatuan, Province of Surigao del Sur, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 71, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4857, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Perez, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 72, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4858, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Calawag, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 73, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4859, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Plaridel, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 74, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4860, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Ginayangan, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 75, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4861, introduced by Representative Tan, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the Municipality of Alabat, Province of Quezon, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar. Committee Report number 76, submitted jointly by the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance on House Bill number 4862, introduced by Representative Gonzales, entitled An Act Establishing a Multi-Species Marine Hatchery in the City of Ligao, Province of Albay, and appropriating funds, therefore recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Cynthia Villar.
All of the foregoing are referred to the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
I'll sponsor.
Mr. President, may I have a 1-minute suspension?
Minute suspension. Tawagin si JV, patawag mo. Okay.
We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders. Senate Bill 1449 under Committee Report Number 62.
Are there any objection? Hearing none. Order is carried.
I move to consider Senate Bill 1449 under Committee Report Number 62.
Senate Committee number 1449 is hereby considered.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure, please.
An act extending the validity period of driver's licenses, amending for that purpose Section 23 of Republic Act Number 4136 as amended by Batas Bilang 398 and Executive Order Number 1011, otherwise known as the Land Transportation and Traffic Code.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask the Chairman of the Committee on Public Services, Senator Grace Poe, be recognized.
Chairman of Committee of Public Services, Senator Grace Poe, is hereby recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you also, Senator Gordon, for allowing me this time to deliver a most important sponsorship. I would like to, today, I proudly sponsor Senate Bill number 1449, or an act extending the validity period of driver's licenses from the current 3 years to 5 years. This is a very straightforward bill that may appear a simple amendment to Republic Act number 4136, or the Land Transportation and Traffic Code, but greatly impacts the convenience of motorists in securing a license. In 2016 alone, there were 5.8 million people who applied for a driver's license. This includes applications for a student permit. Just imagine how many people will benefit from this amendment. Extending the validity of a driver's license is a commonsensical idea that should have been done a long time ago. Hindi lang makakaiwas sa traffic at sa pagpila ng mahaba ang ating mga kababayan na nangangailangan mag-renew, pero nakakaiwas din sila sa red tape ng gobyerno. Although the LTO has already issued Administrative Order number 2016-34 in line with the President's pronouncements to extend the validity of the driver's licenses, we should bear in mind that an EO cannot amend a law. What Congress prescribes, only Congress can amend. Thus, while we commend the executive branch for initiating the steps that will pilot the issuance of a 5-year license, it is my position that passing this bill into law is definitely needed. Once passed into law, the validity of a driver's license will not just be extended from 3 to 5 years, but those without infractions during those 5 years may also be granted a 10-year license. The new license will also have better security features. Ngayon, kapag kinumpis ka ng local government ang lisensya ng isang motorista na pasaway, gagawa lang ng affidavit of loss ang driver na yon at makakuha siya ng isa pang lisensya. So there are instances when one person has 2 licenses. With the new licenses, this will no longer be possible. The licenses will be connected to a system that will alert the LTO if the license was previously confiscated. This can be done through the biometric features of the card. Another problem of the current ID is the useless barcode on the card. Wala pang laman yung mga barcode na yon. The LTO has assured us this will change with the issuance of the new card by August. The barcode, when scanned, can easily inform police officers of any violation committed by the driver. Currently, the LTO requires deputized agents to upload a driver's violation by way of a temporary operator's permit within 24 hours. In the bill, we will require all agencies and even LGUs issuing traffic violations to continue this practice of uploading violations to the LTO system within 24 hours. This is the reason why it takes time to procure this type of card. Hindi po ito parang school ID lang na napapagawa sa tabi-tabi. But the question we all want to ask is this: will it cost more? The answer is no. Baka bumaba pa. From the current fee of 820 pesos, the LTO is expected to charge only around 700 pesos for the new card. Some may be apprehensive extending the validity of the driver's licenses to 5 years, considering that there are a lot of bad drivers out there. The remedy for this has nothing to do with the period of validity of a driver's license, as the license can be revoked or suspended any time by the LTO. The remedy is for the LTO to conduct better tests and implement training programs for motorists, especially those who drive public utility vehicles. These solutions, however, will be the subject of a different committee hearing which I intend to hold. I hope that my colleagues in the Senate will see to the immediate passage of the bill, which will save all the drivers in this land millions of man-hours otherwise spent in queuing to get the permit to operate a motor vehicle. Maraming salamat po.
Mr. President, to co-sponsor the measure, may we recognize the President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto.
Any objection? Hearing none, the Senate President Pro Tem, Ralph Recto, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. The sponsorship speech on the bill extending the driver's license validity from 3 years to 5 years and for its renewal extended to 10 years will be very brief, as the bill is simple, straightforward, and needs no elaborate explanation. Its benefits, however, will be enjoyed by millions of Filipinos. The advantage of having the validity of driver's license extended is obvious from the driver's point of view. This means no more long queue at the Land Transportation Office or LTO of drivers seeking to apply for renewal of driver's licenses. This will effectively reduce the long period of waiting for the LTO license card itself, and no need to pay alleged fixers to expedite processing of said license. This is the best anti-red tape measure the government can adopt for LTO. It is not complicated and can derive results immediately at the least cost to the government and the public. At this point, I wish to extend my gratitude to the chairperson of the committee, Senator Grace Poe, for recognizing the merit and adopting this proposal on the bill as expressed during the committee hearing. I refer to the provision that the fees charged for the driver's license should not be more than the government's procurement costs. The efficiency of the government procurement system can result in the reduction of the cost of the license cards, so that this proposed measure limits the fees to be charged by government to be not higher than the actual cost of procurement. The government should not earn extra income out of the issuance of a license card. This is a service to the public and not part of the revenue generation efforts of the government. Besides, the income is remitted to the National Treasury and is not retained by the LTO to augment its budget for operational requirements. Hence, NEDA, the government agency mandated to approve fees and charges of government agencies, should immediately adjust downward the approved fees for driver's license whenever the actual cost based on the bidding process and award of contract turns out lower than the approved rates. The committee has also appreciated my suggestion to include an online application process for the renewal of driver's licenses. The availability of an online facility will definitely expedite the renewal of licenses at the least cost both to the LTO and the applicant. This will mean less human intervention on the licensing process and thus reduce corruption. The government saves also on paper and other operating costs. The applicant will no longer need to queue at the LTO and saves him time and other personal expenses. The time has come for a better system in driver's licensing. This bill will respond to the problems of delays and costs in the present system. It is common sense and costs nothing. On this note, I urge this august body to approve the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, to give time to the members to study the proposed measure, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1449 under Committee Report Number 62.
Are there any objection? Hearing none, consideration of Senate Bill number 1449 under Committee Report number 62 is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. For a short manifestation, may we recognize Senator Richard Gordon.
If there are no objection, Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon to my colleagues here. As you know, from time to time I would stand up here to raise a citizen of our country who's done very well. You will recall the last time I was here, I raised Mang Tatoy of Iloilo, who was a lowly fisherman, a grade 4 graduate, but went up to become a very, very great entrepreneur, very famous restaurant that all of us go to, including ambassadors, wherever you go to Iloilo. Today I rise because I know somebody again on a personal level who has risen above all adversity. And if you have time later on, and I urge everybody to do that, Senate President Drilon has been there. I know Senate President Pimentel has been there. Try to give some time to the exhibit near, I believe it was the Padilla Room, if I'm not mistaken. And you will see there a map of the Murillo Velarde 1734 map, which is the mother of all Philippine maps, Mr. President. And this young man that I'm talking about is Mel Velarde. He is the father of a photographer in the Constitutional Convention when I was still very, very young, not too very long ago, again. And I can tell you, Mr. President, he was 8 years old. He was trying to get after the footsteps of his father. Sinusundan niya yung tatay niya. And we even had a picture. I was trying to look for it in my archives, and I'm going to look for it as soon as I finish here. When he was 8 years old, and they took photographs of me being the youngest delegate and he being the youngest photographer in the country at that time, especially in the Constitutional Convention. This young man later on went to St. Anthony's High School in Singalong and grade school, and went to Ateneo for a year, then went to UP for a year, and then was selected in the UN Student Conference, and he was sent to the United States, or after which he became a member of KLTA-TV, and I don't think that's the picture he took. The oath taking was the one he took, but that anyway, that would pass. There was the coat taking on the right side. And I can tell you, he took that photograph, and he was 8 years old. And when he went to the UN, he went on to study in Boston University after being working for KLTV at a very, very young age. Now, Mr. President, after that, after graduating summa cum laude from Boston University with a degree in humanities and sciences, he went on to take an MBA course in Harvard, and where he took 2 to 3 months in a year for 3 years to finish that course. Today, this young man of very humble beginnings, his father, after all, was a photographer in the Concon. Sometimes we take our photographers for granted here, and they are indeed very, very good people who document history, and we should really take time out to take a look at them once in a while and consider their families as well. Today we have somebody who has acquitted himself very well. From humble beginnings, from a father who became blind. Nabulag po ang tatay niya nung siya yung photographer. And this young man went on and finished his courses, sariling sikap, sabi nga ni Manny Villar, and became a graduate of Harvard, a graduate of Boston University. And today he is CEO of Gamboa, or now Corporation, which is a very big communications outfit. It is publicly listed. Now, Mr. President, the reason why I stood up, he texted me this morning, and I went there today in the Murillo Velarde 1734 map, and I was wondering why it was the mother of all Philippine maps. And for good reason, I wanted to come up here because today we have this conflict with China, and this could very well be our proof that we have control of the Spratlys, which was then called Paragua Islas de Paragua, or Los Bajos de Paragua, and of course, in my own province, a tiny island with the label Panakot at that time, which we now call Panatag. Nung araw, Panakot, takot lahat sila nung araw, ngayon tayo lang tinatakot, which is later named Bajo de Masinloc, or Scarborough Shoal, which is in Masinloc, Zambales, Mr. President. Now let me just quote from this, and you can see the picture of the map there, Mr. President. This picture, or this map, was acquired by him at the instance of Chief of Justice Carpio, my classmate in the Supreme Court. And He was acted on because his name was Velarde and the map was drawn by Murillo de Velarde, a Jesuit. And he bought it from the Duke of Northumberland and the trustee of the Northumberland Estates on November 4, 2014. Now, you will recall, Mr. President, that the British were here in the 1600s, and when they left, after 2 years, they took away a lot of treasures from our country, including maps, cartographic evidence, which we now is in our possession. Now, Mr. President, nung hinikayat siya ni Justice Carpio, thank God for Justice Carpio, hinikayat siya na kapangalan niya ito, nag-drawing nito, mapa na ito, na isang Jesuita, akala niya milyon lang yung babayaran niya, yung pala umabot ng 12.5 million pesos yung map. But he did not flinch. Binili niya at ito ibinigay niya ngayon sa ating Office of the Solicitor General and to be used donated by Mel Velasco Velarde as a gift to the Filipino people, signed with the Office of the Solicitor General to acknowledge the donation, and it is going to be formally turned over to the President of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, during the celebration of Independence Day on June 12, 2017. And I hope they do that. I hope they really do that. I will just go to another topic for the moment because Frank Dillon, Senator Dillon, and myself have expressed concern over a statement made by Senator De Venecia, former Speaker De Venecia, that they want joint exploration of Benham rice. That's very unsettling, Mr. President, if not very disconcerting. You could have seismic surveys of the area jointly with other countries, but we should not engage in joint exploration, especially with somebody who has not been exactly friendly to our claims that are legitimate in our country. Of course, I advocate friendship with the People's Republic of China. After all, many of us are part Chinese, and they have been here for a long time. But that doesn't excuse the fact that they can go run rampant on our claims and insult us at times by their capacity or by their tendency to bring, 50 ships in our area of responsibility and, to a certain point, intimidate and, more importantly, threaten our fishermen and our Navy, which is going to be another topic of a speech later on strengthening our armed forces. But going back to the topic at hand, Mr. President, the beauty of this map, drawn by Spanish Jesuit friar Pedro Murillo Velarde, together with two Filipinos, Francisco Suarez, who drew the map, and Nicolas de la Cruz Bagay, who engraved it. This large format map, 1120 millimeters by 1,200 millimeters, shows the entire Philippine archipelago from Babuyan Islands or Batanes all the way down to Tawi-Tawi. And it includes, of course, Panacot, which is Bao de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal, and the islands of Spanish, that time named Los Bajos de Paragua. Having said that, Mr. President, this is one of 20 heirlooms owned by the Duke of Northumberland in London, and that were scheduled to be auctioned on November 4, 2014. Justice Carpio shared this information to various public and private museums and individuals, including Filipino technology entrepreneur and educator Mel Velasco Velarde. And Mr. Velarde participated in the auction and gained ownership of this artifact. Like I said, he has most generously turned this over to the Philippines, to President Duterte ultimately, and he has given a copy of the map for the Senate Museum to Senate President Pimentel. I was invited along with other senators on May 4, but I could not attend. As you know, I was in the Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society board meeting in Geneva, and I'm glad that he had this exhibit here today, so I got a chance to see this wonderful experience of seeing, the 1734 map, which certainly acquits our claim towards these areas that must belong to our country. We must not relinquish this claim. By the way, this map includes Sabah, Mr. President. So it's a very encompassing map, Mr. President. And that includes all our historical claims, and we must give support. And I speak here to give that support, and I'm sure the Senate will give him that support for his generosity, his altruism, but more important, his sense of history to our country. If our country cannot treasure our past, cannot even raise our heroes, for example, Lapu-Lapu became a fish instead of being the conqueror of the foreign invader. In fact, the first Asian conqueror of a foreign invader, and make him a fish. I mean, there's something wrong with our culture. And this is important. The fact that this map has now been taken will be something that we can obviously utilize in the future, and it should be shown to many of the young people throughout the archipelago. I think copies should be brought in all the schools in the country, and the government should provide that. 1734 map should be displayed in all elementary, high school, and colleges of our country. That way, we will know our roots, Mr. President. Having said that, I would like everybody to just turn their seat around and take a look at this young man, 8 years old when I was the youngest delegate of the Constitutional Convention. He's seated there. He's made a name for himself. He did not inherit fame or fortune. He earned it. And he's a Filipino who knows how to give back. He's one of those who took that photograph that I treasure very deeply when I administered the oath of office to President Diosdado Macapagal as the President of the Constitutional Convention, Mr. President. And so today, I would like to thank the Senate for giving me this wonderful opportunity to turn a page in history and treasure that page and make sure that we don't forget any of our historical, treasures, our historical artifacts, and the people who really served their country by keeping all the historical records and sharing it to our museums. Thank you very much, and I'd like to move that Mel Velarde be commended by the Senate, not only for all his undertakings, his bawal ang tabad mentality, his never say die mentality, his mentality to work hard at all times and survive all crises, loss of a father who got blind, a man who came from humble beginnings and was able to overcome all those challenges to become one of the better citizens and better angels in our human soul. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and God bless the Philippines.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Cynthia Villar, the chairman of the Committee on Agriculture, will be sponsoring 14 House bills pertaining to the establishment of marine hatcheries in the various parts of the country. Now, similar to what we have done during the previous Congresses, Senator Villar will deliver an omnibus sponsorship on the measures. However, for purposes of its passage on second and third readings, we will be taking it up one at a time. So I move that that procedure be followed, Mr. President.
There is no objection. The procedure as moved by the Majority Leader is hereby approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders the following bills: House Bill 4848, House Bill 4850, 4851, 4852, 4853, 4854, 4855, 4856, 4857, 4858, 4859, 4860, 4861, 4862. That's all, Mr. President.
There any objection? Hearing none, motion is hereby carried.
Being in the calendar for special orders now, Mr. President, I move to consider House Bills 4848, 4850, 4851, 4852, 4853, 4854, 4855, 4856, 4857, 4858, 4859, and 4860, 4861, and 4862.
There no objection. Consideration of the House bill enumerated is hereby in order.
May I now ask the Secretary to read the title of the measures, Mr. President?
An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the city of Bislig, province of Surigao del Sur, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Lopez, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Atimonan, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Gumaca, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Barubo, province of Surigao del Sur, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Tagkawayan, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Quezon, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Binatuan, province of Surigao del Sur, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Perez, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Calawag, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Plaridel, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Ginayangan, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Alabat, province of Quezon, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing a multi-species marine hatchery in the municipality of Ligao, province of Albay, and appropriating funds therefore. An act establishing
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to sponsor the mentioned measures, may we ask the Chairman of the Committee on Agriculture and Foods, Senator Cynthia Villar, be recognized.
Senator Villar is recognized.
Mr. President, my fellow senators, I stand here today to sponsor various local bills referred to the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Food. These are House Bill 448, 4850, 4851, 4852, 4853, 4854, 4855, 4856, 4857, 4858, 4859, 4860, 4861, and 4862. Under Committee Report Numbers 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76 respectively. Our committee, jointly with the Committee on Finance, held 2 joint public hearings on April 17 and last May 10 to discuss the said legislations. For brevity, I will not read the full titles of the bill and will just mention the bill's number and short titles. The 14 bills I'm sponsoring are proposing the establishment of multi-species marine hatcheries. 10 of the bills are authored by Representative Angelina Tan of the 4th District of the Province of Quezon and will mandate the establishment of multi-species marine hatcheries in the municipalities of Lopez, Atimonan, Gumaca, Tagkawayan, Quezon, Perez, Calawag, Plaridel, Ginayangan, and Alabat respectively, all of which are in the province of Quezon. The 3 other House bills are authored by Representative Johnny Pimentel of the 2nd District of Surigao del Sur, which mandate the establishment of multi-species marine hatchery in Bislig, Barobo, and Hinatuan in the province of Surigao del Sur. The remaining House Bill 4862, authored by Representative Fernando Gonzalez of the 3rd District of Albay, mandates the establishment of multi-species marine hatchery in Ligao, Albay. Mr. President, I would like to emphasize that our committee closely coordinated and consulted with the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, regarding the proposed legislations. They have provided us with recommendation, among which is that instead of establishing fishery research stations or center, multi-species marine hatchery should be established, as those are more expansive in nature. Multi-species marine hatcheries cover breeding, hatching, and rearing. BFAR will provide the funding for the construction of the facilities, the purchase and installment of the necessary equipment, and will conduct training for recipient local government units on the management of and operation of the facility. BFAR will manage it for 2 years, then after 2 years, they will turn it over to the local government units. Moreover, the species that should be bred and hatched is also upon the recommendation of BFAR and the concerned LGU to identify the most suitable for the area. Mr. President, I believe that the proposed bills of our esteemed colleagues at the House of Representatives will really contribute to the growth and development of the fisheries sectors and allied industries in the respective cities and municipalities in their areas. That in turn will increase the income of fisher folks who, together with farmers, remain among the poorest in our country. As you know, the goal of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Food, as well as this representation, is the sustainable growth and development of the agriculture sector and improving the plight of Filipino farmers and fisher folks. I believe that the establishment of multi-species marine hatcheries in areas where they can provide the needed benefits to fisher folks and fishing communities is a positive step in that direction. The Department of Agriculture through BFAR also support the establishment of marine hatcheries facilities as such are considered critical intervention and are specified in the 2016 to 2020 Comprehensive National Fisheries Industry Development Plan. According to BFAR, the proposed legislation will help attain 3 aquaculture strategies cited in the said development plan. These are Strategy 1, security, quality, fry, seed supply through coordinated investment in propagation facilities like broodstock, hatcheries, and nursery. Strategy number 4, invest on species with high commercial potentials. And strategy number 6, optimize operation of mariculture parks. I also would like to emphasize here, Mr. President, that the aquaculture or fish farming is crucial for our food security. There is an uptrend in aquaculture globally. The number of fish now harvested from farms has doubled or nearly tripled in recent years, and aquaculture is fulfilling nearly half of the world's demand for fish. According to the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, aquaculture now provides 63.6 million tons of fish per year, which isn't far behind the 67.2 million tons coming via wild catch. As early as 2015, farming is expected to surpass fisheries as the main producer of fish. In fact, by 2050, which is 33 years from now, they are predicting that aquaculture will provide 100% of fish already. Having said all of that at this point, Mr. President and esteemed colleagues, I seek the urgent passage of House Bill number 4848, 4850, 4851, 4852, 4853, 4854, 4855, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, and 62 under Committee Report 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76, respectively. Thank you very much.
Majority Leader.
Thank you. Mr. President, to give time to the members to study the proposed measure, I move to suspend consideration of the enumerated committee reports and House bills, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Let me take this opportunity, Mr. President, to manifest and make a motion to this effect. Well, this representation, together with the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Rilon, we've noticed that the several House bills of local applications have been or has already started to be transmitted in the Senate for calendaring for first reading. Now, based on our long years in our stay here in the Senate, it's been my experience that these local bills are quite voluminous in number, and that these consume a considerable time to be read by the Senate Secretary and referred to the appropriate committees by the Senate President. So this practice, Mr. President, even in the past, has slowed down and impedes the process to finish important measures logged in our agenda. So we consulted the Secretariat, and we reviewed the Senate rules and the Philippine Constitution as well. And we found out that there is no specific rule that requires us to read the complete titles of these numerous local bills into the records. For the record, in the Constitution, Article 6, Section 26(2) only provides that no bill passed by either House shall become a law unless it has passed 3 readings on separate days, period. So, Mr. President, allow me to propose, for purposes of first reading and reference to the committees of the bills, I would like to move, then, with the consent of the Chamber, that the first readings as far as House bills are of local applications are concerned, that only the short title of the House bills that reflects their principal intentions shall be read by the Senate Secretary for its proper referral. This is without prejudice, however, for the showing of complete titles of the concerned local bills in our overhead projectors while the short title of the House bill is being read. So, to the reflection of the whole titles of the local bills for the records of the Senate. So, I so move, Mr. President, that this be adopted.
Is there any objection to the motion of the Majority Leader, which in effect establishes a new rule for us to observe? An objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special order, Senate Bill 1399, under Committee Report number 58.
An objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to consider Senate Bill 1399 under Committee Report number 58.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 1399 under Committee Report number 58 is now under consideration.
May we ask Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act establishing the police law enforcement courts, granting this exclusive original jurisdiction over violations of constitutional rights and PNP rules of engagement committed by the police, amending Batas Pambansa Bilang 129 as amended, otherwise known as the Judiciary Reorganization Act of 1980, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask the Chairman of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Senator Richard Gordon, be recognized.
The Chairman of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Senator Gordon, is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and Majority Floor Leader. My distinguished colleagues, it is a pleasure for me to sponsor this bill under Committee Report number 58 under the joint investigation made pursuant to EJK killings. And I am privileged that Senator Lacson and Legarda are co-authors along with the members of the committee. And this is an act establishing the police law enforcement courts, granting these exclusive original jurisdiction over violations of constitutional rights and PNP rules of engagement committed by the police, amending Batas Pambasa bilang 129 as amended, otherwise known as Judiciary Reorganization Act of 1980, appropriating funds that are for and for other purposes. Having said that, Mr. President, I would like to state that this is also not just a reaction, but a cogent involvement and intervention by the Senate and by the legislature on the burning issues of the time that has crescendoed into this administration, where so many extrajudicial killings, or in the past, salvagings, or for that matter, today, riding in tandem, have been an issue, Mr. President. And having said that, Mr. President, your committees of Public Order and Committee on Justice, headed by this representation, has come out with several bills, including one that is already due for interpellation, which is the motorcycle bill, and at the same time, this bill, Mr. President. Now, what does this bill provide, Mr. President? Under Article 10, Section 21, the preservation of peace and order within the region shall be the responsibility of the local police agencies, which shall be organized, maintained, supervised, and utilized in accordance with applicable laws. The defense and security of the region shall be the responsibility of the national government. Now, Article 16, Section 6 of the Constitution states that the state shall establish and maintain one police force, which shall be national in scope and civilian in character, to be administered and controlled by a national police commission. The authority of local executives or the police units in their jurisdiction shall be provided by law. I will hasten, Mr. President, that when I was in the Constitutional Convention, I opposed the nationalization of the police force into creating one national police force, simply because one agency within that police force becomes corrupt, the whole national police system is involved and becomes categorized as corrupt or inefficient or incompetent, Mr. President. That's why I'm only being consistent when I try to come up with law and order issues in this chamber, as I've done in the past. Article 2, Section 4, the prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. The government may call upon the people to defend the state, and in the fulfillment thereof, all citizens may be required under conditions provided by law to render personal, military, or civil service. And then in Article 2, Section 5, the maintenance of peace and order, the protection of life, liberty, and property, and the promotion of the general welfare are essential for the enjoyment by all the people of the blessings of democracy. As you know, Mr. President, we have been besieged by all parties, practically, who are become very concerned with the prevailing crime situation during the last several decades. As early as during the time of Mr. Marcos, and when I was a senator, I went to Washington. The issue of extrajudicial killings have been raised before me by senators from the United States when I was lobbying for the Veterans Bill, Mr. President. They threatened not to give us the Veterans Bill, which they ultimately gave successfully, and they said they're not going to give it because of extrajudicial killings. But we have really been very cavalier about this. We seem to have adopted yung attitude ng ating mga kabayan na talagang ganyan, wala tayong magagawa. And so we're like, the proverbial caravan is passing in the middle of the night as the dogs bark. Wala tayong nagagawa kundi tumahol lang ng tumahol sa gabi. And so having said that, Mr. President, we decided that we would show the whole world that we are capable of fixing the problem. Of course, there is no one silver bullet that will eliminate it. After all, in Chicago, the crime situation is extremely, very, very bad, and it's been the subject of many newspaper articles. Of course, there are other situations in other countries that merit the attention of the world. You know, people kill people as terrorists right in front of the parliament in Britain. If you will recall, recently, a policeman, a constable, was stabbed right there and there. So it is not really fair for them to lump the Philippines, although there is justification to do so when there is an inordinate amount of killings in our country. I would be the first ones to speak out, and I'm sure Senator Lacson and all the other members of the Senate will do as well. Having said that, Mr. President, IAS, and I don't want to insult it by calling it IWAS, which is the Internal Affairs Security of the police, has really been remiss, or perhaps have chosen to say that their hands are tied, with all kinds of excuses like due process and stuff like that. Sometimes it takes years on a simple administrative matter to put a policeman under the heel of discipline. Can you imagine, as of August 2016, the ES has 839 pending cases. Come on, Mr. President, or as Mr. Obama would say, oh, come on, man. Mr. President, you know, this is really ridiculous. There are many, many cases involving policemen in this country. NAPOLCOM from 2010 to 2016 had 1,255 cases remain pending against nearly 4,000 police officers. In some cases, more than one police officer was charged. Again, I say, oh, come on, man. There's a lot of police crimes being perpetrated, and I think, like our judiciary, our administrative police system is quite slow. And in the matter of most of the cases filed involve officers ranked PO, PO2, PO3. These are the lowly police officers. Majority of the offenses are for grave misconduct, serious neglect of duty, and dishonesty. Mr. President, the Ombudsman also from the first semester of 2016 had 515 cases filed against PNP officers. Again, oh, come on, man. It seems that people are really afraid to file cases, and they get lost in the whole bureaucracy of a national police system. And so, therefore, Mr. President, while there are several venues for the filing of cases against PNP personnel, there is presently no central database for police officers under investigation or facing any form of disciplinary procedure. And this is according to Attorney Ferdowsi Masnar, whom I have had the privilege of working with in the NAPOLCOM Legal Affairs Services. Now, Mr. President, let me just point out, when you don't have the spotlight on any agency investigating, it will just go on its merry way and take its time. And that is why the object of this bill is to shine the spotlight of responsibility on the law in the matter of police cases involving, violation of constitutional rights as well as crimes perpetrated by the police upon our public, along with other crimes. Now, here are excerpts from our EJK committee report, Mr. President. Also, our police must be expected to perform their duties vigorously, but in so doing, they have no license to use overwhelming force or eliminate criminals acting as judge, jury, and executioner. There must be no shortcuts. The police force must follow the rules of engagement and the rule of law in their operations against illegal drugs. Under the social contract theory, the police must realize that they are given the privilege and authority to carry guns and enforce the law to protect and serve the citizenry. Naka-uniforme po yan, may tsapa, may baril. Binibigyan natin sila ng responsibility at meron silang kapangyarihan sa ating katauhan, sa ating karapatan, sa ating mga pamilya at sa ating mga propiedades. And when they violate this trust, Mr. President, and social contract, and use their guns against innocent civilians, or when they illegally execute people, they must be summarily punished and removed from the service and made to answer appropriate criminal charges. That is only fair, Mr. President. Now look at the solution. Our solution is to create, one of them is to create police courts, Mr. President. And therefore, we would like to make sure that this bill is passed, simply because by doing so, the Supreme Court will now designate police courts. Now, Mr. President, I know that we need a budget for this. Wala pa tayong budget dyan, Mr. President. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think we need to operate it, but this is something that the Supreme Court can now pull from the legislature, because right now they can immediately implement it by designating certain courts in the province as police courts so that we don't have to expend money. But if there are many of them, then they can go to this law and start, implementing the appointment of special courts and special appellate courts, particularly on police crimes, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, the Supreme Court will designate existing RTC to handle civil and criminal cases involving the abuse of authority, whether in or off duty of the members of the PNP, including civil and criminal cases arising out of the violation of a number of the PNP or its PNP operational procedures and other police protocols designed to protect the rights of the accused. Ang kumisan ng police pagdalasing, nananampal, siningil ng balot, tasampalin yung balot vendor. Ilan lang naman yan, Mr. President. But these are things that cry to heaven for vengeance. Or for that matter, ng habol, dahil may baril, nakabaril, at papalusot na kung ano sasabihin, and this is not seemly for a country that claims to be only Christian country in Asia and a democratic symbol in Asia. Now, this will also include appellate police courts, designated by Supreme Court from among the divisions of the Court of Appeals, which shall handle all appeals coming from the police courts and appeals over the decision resolution of the NAPOLCOM. The Supreme Court shall provide periodic and continuing program for training so that they would be familiar with police procedures, in terms of rules of engagement and the like. All civil and criminal cases, including the revised penal code and special penal laws, whether in or off duty, filed against members of the PNP, is part of the coverage. All civil and criminal cases, including the revised penal code and special penal laws, arising out of the violation of a member of the PNP of its rules of PNP, operational procedure, rules of engagement, and other police protocols. For example, yung secret jails, nakakagulat. Ito ay tatamaan kagad ito at mabuti at ang ating mismong number one representative talaga na nanggaling sa kapulisan ang siya nagsabi mismo, Senator Lacson, na walang lugar yan sa isang syudad katulad ng ating bayan. All complaints for the violation of constitutional rights or one of the accused is a member of the PNP. Even the failure to cite the Miranda Doctrine as enshrined in our Constitution will also be part of this. Issuance of writ of habeas corpus where there is evidence that the victim is held under the custody of the police force. This should be very well for those secretly detained, Mr. President. Of course, they should be supported by the prosecution of the police courts, prosecutors. So the DOJ shall assign prosecutors to prosecute cases within the jurisdiction of the police courts. DOJ shall provide mechanism to ensure the speedy resolution of preliminary investigations within 30 days from the receipt of the complaint. Talagang dapat mabilis, continuous hearing, Mr. President, because we don't want the police force to be harassed, tapos tatagal ang kaso, hindi maka-function yung tao. So, Mr. President, we will also provide assistance of public attorneys to represent PNP personally charged with violations cognizable before the police courts for acts directly connected to performance of their lawful duties as police officers without need of evidence of indigency. Tama lang ho yun. Dapat talaga yan, union ng police ang dapat magbabayad niyan, pero wala tayo nun eh. So, lagay natin sa public attorney. PNP shall ensure adequate legal representation of its force by forging agreements with free legal services with the IBP and other reputable law organizations. We have to protect our policemen from unnecessary harassment, Mr. President. Upon filing of a civil or criminal case, paano naman kung ililipat yung police? Hindi po pwede yan. Because pagka pinail po yan, kailangan masabi kaagad sa kanyang hepe o the chief of the PNP mismo, and the NAPOLCOM shall be informed in writing of a case filed against any member of the Philippine National Police. So hindi nila pwedeng iiwas yung police. The moment nag-file a prosecutor for preliminary investigation or the police court for trial, kailangan alam na kagad ng PNP yan. Director General at saka NAPOLCOM. PNC shall seek approval from the appropriate prosecutor or the police court to which the case is assigned of any transfer, reassignment of the accused police personnel subject to the filing of the complaint. Dapat alam natin kung saan nagpunta yung police at dapat hahabulin nyo kahit saan naroon siya. PNP shall ensure the attendance of its accused personnel in all hearings before the prosecutor and the police court. Excuse me. Meaning to say, di naman pwedeng ikukubli nila yung police. Now, jurisdiction of the appellate police law enforcement courts. Lahat ng resolutions of the police courts, decisions of the National Police Commission in administrative cases over uniformed members of the Philippine National Police, decisions, resolutions of the Civil Service Commission in administrative cases over 17 non-uniformed employees of the Philippine National Police. Lahat po yan babaksak doon sa appellate court. Decision of the police court shall be appealed in the same manner and subject to the same conditions as appeals from the ordinary RTC. Now, the Supreme Court shall promulgate special rules of procedure for the transfer of cases to the new courts during the transition period and for the disposition of police cases. Dapat ilipat na yan kaso yan doon sa mga police courts. And finally, to ensure na may pera yan kahit paano, Supreme Court shall be allowed to use 10%, and this is the recommendation of the court administrators of the Supreme Court, of the income derived from filing and other court fees under Rule 141 of the Rules of Court for research and other operating expenses, including capital outlay. During the March 7 hearing of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Attorney Miles Marquez said that the Office of Court Administration can already recommend to the Supreme Court the designation of existing RTCs as police courts, especially in the areas mentioned under Section 10, cities of Manila, Quezon, Pasay, Caloocan, Makati, Pasig, Mandaluyong, Muntinlupa, Lawag, Baguio, Santiago, Dagupan, Olongapo, Cabanatuan, San Jose, Angeles, Cavite, Batangas, Lucena, Naga, Iriga, Legazpi, Rojas, Iloilo, Bacolod, Dumaguete, Tacloban, Cebu, Tagbilaran, Surigao, Butuan, Cagayan de Oro, Davao, General Santos, Oroquieta, Osamis, Dapolog, Zamboanga, Pagadian, Iligan, and in other places as the Supreme Court may deem necessary of the bill. He also said that they can already send a recommendation to the Supreme Court and furnish the committee data of cases being filed and heard by this especially designated police courts and cases being appealed from NAPOCOM to the specially designated courts. The Supreme Court has been very cooperative, Mr. President. As you know, I represent the Senate in the Judicial Bar Council, and no less than the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Chief Justice Sereno, has expressed her approval and support for this measure, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, I can provide you with the statistics, but I think it is superfluous already. I think the important thing to remember here is that when we have this is an extra layer of protection for the public, a very important layer. Even judges that are known to coddle or prosecutors that are known to coddle will now be under the spotlight of public scrutiny because they will now be under the spotlight of this law, Mr. President. And that is why I feel very confident that this measure will make a difference in the lives of our people. And certainly we can now tell others, especially those UN people or anybody who comes to us, that we can help the Commission on Human Rights by this law by making sure that we have started several measures to eliminate the continuous so-called EJK killing, salvaging, or riding in tandem in this country. It's important that we do so, Mr. President. It is important that our public, more than the UN or more than anybody else, is seeing that the Senate of the Republic of the Philippines is awake, has got all its eyes open and its hearts and mind focused into making sure that the public will be protected from rogue policemen, as well as protect policemen from rogue, people who try to harass police as well. And so, Mr. President, I urge the Senate to approve passage of this measure. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. Majority
Thank you.
Leader.
Mr. President, to give time to the members to study the bill, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1399 under Committee Report Number 58.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1444 under Committee Report Number 61.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill number 1444 under Committee Report number 61 is now under consideration.
This is the measure on the expanded National Integrated Protected Area System, NIPAS Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that within the period of interpellation. So I therefore move to recognize the sponsor, Chair of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, Senator Cynthia Villar, and to interpellate Senator Risa Ontiveros.
The chairperson, Senator Villar, is recognized as well as Senator Ontiveros to interpellate.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good lady from Las Piñas. Would the good sponsor be willing to entertain just about 4 questions, Mr. President?
We would welcome the questions of our good Senator Risa Hontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good sponsor. First of all, on page 33, This is Section 7. Section 7, letter J, on page 33. Would the good sponsor be amenable to, at the proper time, to an amendment to delete the terms "if feasible" from Section 7, letter J, page 33, to make the gender quota in the National Integrated Protected Area Systems Act, to make the gender quota mandatory? After all, Mr. President, noting that even the Magna Carta of Women mandates at least 40% women in planning bodies. And this PAMB, Protected Areas Management Bureau, is a planning
Di
body.
ba if feasible lang to? Di ba? Yes, we shall amend accordingly to conform to the provisions of the Magna Carta of Women. We will adopt the 40% requirement.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and good sponsor. Moving on now to my second question.
If feasible. If feasible.
Also in Section 7, but letter G, on page 31, could I inquire as to the reason for reducing the NGO or PO representation from 3 representatives to 1? I ask this question, Mr. President, good sponsor, because in total, in the PAMB, only 4 members at most, before the proposed amendment that the good sponsor has so generously said she will accept at the proper time, but then at most only at least 4 will represent the interests of non-government groups. 1 from NGO, 1 from the indigenous people sector, 1 from the academe, and 1 from the private sector. They would be severely outnumbered. And this question, I think, is especially relevant when there may be questionable government projects and then no non-government representatives to question. If there would be any questionable government projects, perhaps the government representatives in the PAMB would not be able or as able to openly question. So the concern behind my question today, Mr. President, good sponsor, is that how could we ensure fiscalization within the PAMB if NGO representation would be minoritized?
Mr. President, the current NIPAS Act, RA 7586, provide for 3 representatives from NGOs and people's organization. Although we reduced the representative of NGOs and people's organization in this version of the new law, of proposed law, we are adding 1 representative from the IPs, 1 representative from the academic community, and 1 representative from the private sector. So we're doing 4 instead of 3. And to make the representation wider, we are including representative from the national government, like the what do you call this? NEDA and DA, DOST, BNB, DND, and so I have sat in the board of state universities and colleges during my term as a congresswoman, and I find them very helpful and very pro people, these representatives. They are not really government, they are from the, or rather, they are not elected government officials, they are more of part of the bureaucracy of the government, and I find them very helpful in helping advocacies of whatever organization they are being sent to. So I think it will balance the government, the elected people in in the PAMB.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the good sponsors pointing out that, in fact, in her bill, they added non-government representatives from the IP sector, academe, and from the private sector. However, I would like to further point out, Mr. President, that still, even these four, plus the
Plus the four
Fo-
from
the
the DOST.
yes, Mr. President.
DOST, what else? DA, the DAR, and the DND. I think they will balance the people in the PAMB.
The balance that I'm trying to point out, Mr. President, or more precisely, the imbalance, would in fact be between the numbers of non-government members and the numbers of government members. Because as the good sponsor correctly pointed out, there will be regional directors from national government agencies, yes, the departments of agriculture, science and technology, and national defense, plus NEDA. There will
And
also
then
be,
we
Mr.
will have
President.
representative from the barangays.
Yes, Mr. President. And those
the
barangay chairs.
barangays where the areas will be located in, and there are a lot representing the barangay. So if you're worried about the representation of the people, then I think their barangay can very well represent them if they have problems in the PAMB.
Additionally, precisely, Mr. President, the barangay chairs as well are elected government officials. And as an aside, I hope they will continue to be elected beyond
May
October
I ask
of this year.
what people do you like us to include in the representation?
Yes, I will point out, Mr. President, after completing my premise that there will be an overwhelming number of government representatives in the PAMB as compared to non-government. In addition to the ones that the good sponsor and I have already identified, there will also be the DNR regional director, the governor or governors of the respective provinces, the district representatives, and the mayors. I also appreciate the point of the good sponsor, the comparative experience with the boards of the state colleges and universities. But of course, just as the SUCs are in charge of the sensitive matter of education, then the PAMB, the PAMB, which is within this bill that the good sponsor is sponsoring, is dealing with the equally, if not even more sensitive matter of the environment. So at the proper time, and I wish to ask the good sponsor if she would be willing to at least retain the number of NGOPO representation from the currently proposed reduced 1 to the current 3, Mr. President.
So the total of the private sector will be 7. Is that 3 plus
Just 7, Mr. President.
plus 3, 6.
Yes, Mr. President.
6.
As compared to the greater number of government
Okay,
representatives.
we accept
Actually,
the
6, Mr.
amendment.
President. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good sponsor.
At the proper time.
At the proper
At the
time,
proper
Mr. President, I will make I will propose the amendment to the good sponsor. Moving on to my third question, Mr. President, in section 11, letter C, on page on page 30. I'll check the page again, Mr. President. But in section 11, letter C, okay, district representatives representing districts within protected areas are to become members of the PAMB. May I know the specific role they will playing? And I ask, Mr. President, because members of Congress, we act as legislators and thus are restricted to oversight functions. So my question is, what specific role would they be playing
When you
within
are
an
a member-
executive planning body?
Mr. President, when you are a member of the PAMB, you help decide the policies of the protected area. When you are a member of a PAMB. So
Mr.
I would like to think that they are interested on what will happen to the protected area in their district. And at the same time, if there is a need for budgets or for programs in the protected area, they're in a position to ask the government to support the protected area.
I agree, Mr. President, that we, members of Congress, set policy and provide for budget. But I believe that we do so at the level of bills such as this one and at the level of the deliberations on the General Appropriations Act. And I would still imagine that the role that we could play after the passage of such laws would be restricted to oversight. So at the proper time, I would reserve to propose an amendment to the good sponsor for her and the committee's consideration.
Okay.
And lastly, Mr. President, for my last question, on page 44, line 20, the LGUs shall not impose property tax and issue a new tax declaration for areas covered by the protected area. Does this mean, good sponsor, that the property tax shall go entirely to PAMB? Property taxes are important sources of funds, especially for cash-strapped LGUs. So shouldn't these taxes be shared between PAMB and the LGUs?
No, the meaning of this is not no property tax provision refers only to government properties inside the protected areas and does not apply to properties owned by private or entities within the protected areas. We will have this clarified. Okay, we cannot curtail the power of LGUs to impose appropriate taxes.
I completely agree, Mr. President. And with the kind clarification of the good sponsor, I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much, good sponsor.
Thank you very much, Senator Hontiveros, and of course, Mr. President. Pwede na to.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, this bill was passed before. The Senate President, well, Senator Franklin Drilon, when we passed this measure, so the Minority Leader is not interpolating. As a matter of fact, he's one of the principal sponsors before. So at this point, we have no other reservations, so I move to close the period of interpellation on Senate Bill 1444, under Committee Report 61.
Any objection? There being none, we close the period for interpellation.
Ngayon, saka na. Okay. We'll move to suspend consideration of the measure. Perhaps at a later time, we can call for the period of amendments, Wednesday or Monday, Mr. President.
Any
So I move
objection?
to suspend consideration.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Motorcycle, meron ka? Gordon. Gordon, no.
Andiyan siya sa likod.
Mr. President, may I have a 1-minute suspension?
Session is suspended.
Masiping wala namang ano. Tanong eh, ikaw. We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
The last item there on agenda today is the Senate Bill 1397. I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1397 under Committee Report Number 57, Mr.
Is there
President.
any objection? There being a motion is approved.
Mr. President, this is the measure on the Motorcycle Prevention Act of 2017. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we're now in the period of interpellation. So I move to recognize the sponsor, Chair of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Senator Richard Gordon.
The sponsor, the chair of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Senator Gordon, is recognized.
May we recognize the Minority Leader, Senator Franklin Leon, Mr. President.
The minority leader is also recognized. Lights on, please. Turn on the lights.
Can I have a 5-minute suspension, Mr. President, just to allow me to go over some items of the bill?
Willingly, Your Honor.
There's no objection. Session suspended. Bal. Dito sa bit.
Mr. President, ready to resume?
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, will the gentleman from Zambales yield a few questions on committee report number 57?
Willingly, Your Honor, to the good gentleman from Iloilo, my good friend Senator Dillon.
My first, the my first question is, under this proposal, will the old plates still be valid?
It will be phased out, Your Honor. They will all be phased out. Eventually, only these sizes will be allowed, big plate numbers will be assigned, and there will be color coding so that the numbers will be less, and it can easily be identified in the region for which the motorcycle belongs.
And how long is the phase-out period, Mr. President? Is it part of the bill?
I did not put that there, Your Honor, because that is a matter of implementation.
So it
But-
will be the LTO who will decide on the phase-out
We
period?
could put it in the bill, Your Honor. You could make it, you could give them a, I'm open to I'm open to suggestions and limitations on, or the time upon which this thing, this motorcycle place will be in order, Mr. President.
Well, as the, I'm more inclined to accept the sponsor's statement that we leave it to the LTO as to the period, because indeed this is an administrative matter.
That's correct,
Which
Mr.
the
President.
administrative agency is in the best position to determine. My next question is, who will bear the cost of these new plates, Mr. President?
It will have to be borne by the rider, by the owner of the motorcycle, Mr. President. It is overridden by the police power of the state. Owning a motorcycle is not a right, it is a privilege when they get registration, Mr. President. The registration is a privilege, not a right, Your Honor.
That may be true, that the registration is a privilege, not a right. But when these plates are still valid, and we pass a law which will invalidate them and charge the cost to them, is there some question of fairness in that system, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, it has always been charged to the owner, whether it's small or big. That has always been charged to the owner. We all pay for our plate numbers. That's part of the cost of owning a motor vehicle. And to my mind, because there are thousands of people being killed by the utilization of motorcycles with plate numbers, or sometimes they deliberately remove the plate number, this bill was envisioned to put a stop to all that by imposing bigger penalties as well as bigger plate numbers for non-usage or for illegal usage, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. My next question is, will the specifications of a bigger plate be left to the LTO? How big is big?
Mr. President, there is I would leave it to them, but subject to an oversight. I was keeping that open in case, in anticipation of a question like that, but I would leave it to an oversight function initially, Mr. President, so that we could test the impact of such a change in terms of witness being able to testify when a crime is committed on board these motorcycles.
And the oversight will be a congressional oversight?
Yes, Mr. President. One from Congress and one from the Senate.
Mr. President, is it really necessary to have a congressional oversight on the size of a plate of a motorcycle?
Just in the beginning, Mr. President, because as you know, at times the absence of political will in many of our implementers or the absence of the realization of the intention of the law is often overlooked by those who implement. And at
Why
times,
don't- why- I'm sorry.
they wilt under pressure of people who will say, it's too onerous for us, or it's too big. They have to really make sure that there's a determination as to what kind of size and what kind of design there will be, Mr. President.
With all due respect, Mr. President, isn't it better if we just indicate the size of the plate in the law itself, subject probably to that's the minimum size, and give the administrative agency some leeway to increase it.
I'm willing to accept that, Mr. President.
All right, instead of having a congressional oversight.
That's correct, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, we know for a fact that there is a delay right now in the issuance of car license plate. I do not know the situation. First, is this a question that would be of concern if we pass this bill? In other words, is it affect the fact that they will change the motorcycle plates? Will that have a bearing on the ability of the LTO to deliver new plates or solve the backlog in the license plates among cars?
Mr. President, I understand the delay is usually because of a losing bidder.
I'm sorry, sir?
And therefore, there is a Supreme Court TRO right now, and that is why it is important that we in the Congress really make sure that this is an answer, that we propagandize this, if you will, if you want to use a dirty word, propagandize it, so that the courts will realize that this is a measure that is needed, and that delays here will cause more deaths, Mr. President.
Okay, so what will now happen with this outstanding TRO? Is it the opinion of the good sponsor that this bill cannot be effective while the TRO is effective?
No, Mr. President, there will just be a new procurement, and the previous plate numbers will be functus officio, in effect, if I may use that phrase.
The situation right now is that the Supreme Court issued a TRO on the production of all plates, both.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, now, what is the effect of the TRO on this bill?
Well, because there's a different matter now at hand, Mr. President. The law has been changed. The rules of the game have practically been changed, and I believe that this would have to go through a different type of, what do you call it, a measure that would have to be raised to the Supreme Court if the protagonists want to issue it before the court, Mr. President. As far as I'm concerned, this is a new measure, and they would have to adapt to the new measure, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I haven't read, obviously, the petition or the TRO issued, but I strongly suspect that the TRO was issued because of the asserted or perceived or alleged violations of the Procurement Act. And the moment this bill is passed, mandating a larger license plates, I assume that the same process which is TRO'd would have to be followed again, meaning the procurement. And if the TRO has been issued, I'm not expressing any opinion as to the effect. I'm just asking the good sponsor if he has reviewed this and that we can implement this law even in view of the TRO.
If I most respectfully posit the view, Mr. President, the issue of anomalous transaction doesn't die. It goes on because the transaction was anomalous. They violated the rules of the Anti-Graft and Corrupted Practices or the procurement law. But in the matter of a new plate, it would have to go through another procedure, in which case LTO would be under severe notice unless you still have the old recalcitrants in that area there that tend to favor, sacred cows. We would have to really overlook that, and I would not be hesitant to put an oversight on this procurement just to be sure that it is not subjected to delay on this matter, Mr. President.
All right, I accept that, and respect that opinion of the sponsor. I just wanted to place at the record that the implementing agency, the LTO in this case, can proceed and procure these larger license plates upon the effective of this law, even with the TRO issued by the Supreme Court. I just want to spread it on record so that the implementers of this law will be guided accordingly as to the legislative intent.
And the gentleman is correct, Mr. President, rightly so, because I believe they should not be forgiven for their malfeasance or misfeasance in the previous procurement, Mr. President. However, it cannot delay the procurement of a new and bigger license plate, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. President, what is the principal purpose of this law, may I ask, Mr. President, just to spread it on the record?
Mr. President, the principal purpose is to take a bite out of crime, so to speak. Thousands of people have been killed by people riding on tandem. Sometimes they ride without motor vehicle, without plate numbers. Most of the time they ride with small plate numbers that you could hardly see, especially in the dark. And they're able to take advantage of this weakness in the law, or this hiatus in the law, to accept criminal liability. And therefore, in order to be able to obviate that, we will come out with bigger plate numbers so that people can see right away, or the policeman can stop them right away. Even before the commission of a crime, you're not wearing a plate number, or your plate number is small, as in the old law, we'll have to stop you, and you have to procure a bigger plate number. And to obviate other things like, oh, I lost my plate number, they have to report the loss of that plate number, otherwise they will be penalized, Mr. President. And the objective, obviously, is to prevent how many cases, a total number of cases of people who were killed by people riding in tandem, and the victims never get justice, Mr. President. And to my mind, it's something that we really have to act as a Senate to be able to make sure that the burden of this government of having the integrity of following a rule of law is emphasized to the whole world. I'm not doing this to protect any president, Mr. President. In fact, I tried to pass this during the first time that I was senator, but unfortunately there was a lobby also at that time saying, oh, it's not aesthetically nice for us. Well, Mr. President, if you order a motorcycle and it is not exactly nice when your father or your mother or a loved one is killed or hit and run by a motorcycle, Mr. President, because he cannot be identified.
Mr. President, we are all aware as lawyers of the overbreadth doctrine under the Constitution, which states that a proper government purpose, which is subject to state regulations, such as prevention of crimes, for example,
Due process.
may not be achieved by means that unnecessarily sweep its subject broadly. Just for the record, can the sponsor explain on the record why the overbreadth doctrine should not apply in this particular case?
Well, the overlying provision, Mr. President, is the police power of the state. There are an inordinate number of cases where general welfare has to be approved, has to be protected, peace and order has to be attained, the reputation of the country as a peaceful, democratic country following rule of law and respecting human rights. All these things come into the picture when you have the promotion of the general welfare clause or the police power of the state. That would limit the so-called rights of individuals. Rights are not infinite, Your Honor, as you know, and the gentleman is a very able and very, very competent lawyer as far as I'm concerned. And we're all aware of the fact that we have to make sure that we adopt the laws that will protect protect the victims rather than protect the criminals. And this is what I like to do, Mr. President. Instead of killing the criminals to protect the victim, you are just saying criminals can no longer do it business as usual, getting away with it. Sometimes they would ride in tandem, or sometimes there'd be 2 or 3 motorcycles. They'd be waiting in the wings in the darkness, and with this now, you can easily be able to obviate this and protect the general welfare.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, our next question is, when will this law become effective? In other words, when will motorcycles be required to have a bigger license plate?
15 days after. I guess about 15 days after publication, Mr. President.
Sorry, sir?
15 days after
15 days after publication.
And
And
after they have the rules and regulations established, 15 days after that, I suppose.
so, 15 days after publication, the law becomes effective.
Of the rules and regulations.
And the rules and regulations. And under Section 5 of the law, a motorcycle or scooter used without bigger plate numbers shall be confiscated by the LTO until a bigger plate is issued. My question, Mr. President, is, it is the LTO which issues the license plate. If the LTO has not yet issued the license plate, why should the LTO confiscate my motorcycle with no bigger license plate?
Well, it is presumed, Mr. President, that the LTO will follow the law, and if they do not, then they should be subject to ombudsman. Mr. President, meaning to say that they have not implemented the law properly, and they're violating the law, Mr. President.
No, Mr. President, precisely the LTO, for one reason or another, has not yet issued to me, even if I applied, a larger plate number. Section 5 of the law, proposed law, will subject me to the penalty of confiscating my motorcycle until a bigger plate is issued. If the cause of the non-issuance is precisely because of the inability of the LTO to provide for such bigger license plate, isn't it unfair, Mr. President? Isn't it contrary to basic precepts of justice that the law will cause the confiscation of my property?
The gentleman is correct, Mr. President. Obviously, we are not tyrants here. The LTO must be mandated to make sure that immediately they produce the necessary system as well as the plate numbers properly color-coded before they implement it. And once it is implemented, Mr. President, in full, then Section 5 should immediately kick in, Mr. President, so much so that if the plate numbers are already being issued and they fail to get that plate number, then they would be forced now to get a plate number from the LTO rather than, park them it in a garage and be able to utilize it for nefarious activities, Mr. President.
Maybe we can rephrase at the appropriate time Section 5 so that we make it clear that this is only effective when the LTO will now have that capacity to deliver the bigger plates.
I agree, Mr. President. We will accept the amendment of the editor of the Philippine Collegian.
Mr. President, we invite the attention of the good sponsor to Section 6 and Section 7. Is there a difference between the two insofar as persons committing a crime?
You mean?
Okay, if the sponsor will allow us, Section 6 provides penalty for use of motorcycle or scooter in the commission of a crime. If the motorcycle or scooter is used in the commission of a crime or to ensure a quick escape from the scene of the crime as witnessed by another person, and a victim dies as a result of this illegal use of a motorcycle or scooter, the motorcycle driver, his back rider, if any, and all conspirators shall be punished by reclusion perpetua. The second paragraph, we need not read. Section 7, on the other hand, says, persons committing a crime through, or with a backrider shall be punished with the penalty of life imprisonment. My impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. President, is that Section 6 and Section 7 both would punish the persons committing the crime through the use of a motorcycle or with a backrider. Is that a correct understanding, Mr. President?
The gentleman is correct, Mr. President, and I guess I will confess to my not being able to see that, Mr. President, but I understand from the staff when this is being undertaken that we included the proposal of Senator Soto that persons committing a crime through or with a backrider shall be punished with the penalty of life imprisonment, which is more severe. Obviously, it should really be life imprisonment if that occurs, Mr. President, or reclusion temporal when there are serious physical injuries. But in case of persons committing a crime through or with a backrider, I would imagine that I would even go to prison mayor, Mr. President, rather than put it under reclusion.
So the
perpetua.
penalty on Section 7 should be lower, and on the period of amendments, that will be...
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, because
Thank you for
otherwise-
citing that, Mr.
Yeah,
President.
otherwise, there will be life imprisonment and reclusion
Everything.
perpetua.
This should be the main law then. Thank you, Mr. President. It's my fault. Thank you, Mr. President.
What is the liability of the registered owner if he is not the rider or the one driving the motorcycle? If any?
If it is used in the commission of a crime resulting in murder,
Yes, the registered owner, does he have any, does the registered owner of the motorcycle used for committing the crime have any liability?
yes, Mr. President, if he fails to report that the motorcycle has been stolen, or that after the commission thereof he doesn't report it, and if he's aware of it, he will also be liable, Mr. President. This is part and parcel of the rule. Fails to timely report to the LTO, that is on Section 9, Section 10, under other penalties, subsection C. If the registered owner of the motorcycle or scooter fails to timely report to the LTO the loss of his bigger license plate, he or she shall be punished with a fine of not less than 10,000 pesos. Of course, if he is aware of it as a co-conspirator, he would have to be, if it results in murder, Mr. President, he would have to be covered under life, under the penalty of life imprisonment.
Well, he is, if there is conspiracy, obviously he has the same penalty as the same as the principal. So the registered owner who fails to make a timely report of the loss of his bigger license plate shall be punished with a fine of 10,000 to not more than 20,000. But this covers loss. If it is not a, if it is not an issue, or is not a case where the license plate was lost and the owner failed to report. In other words, somebody just took his motorcycle, commits the crime, under this proposed measure, does the registered owner incur any liability?
Well, he will, that is the import of this 10C, Your Honor. He fails to report, he is fined, Mr. President. And but if it results, like I said, in a crime, I guess that this could stand a little bit more of improvement in terms of if he is aware. If you want to clarify that, we can accept an amendment to that effect, Mr. President.
With all due respect, Mr. President, Section 10, paragraph C refers to the loss of the bigger license plate and the failure of the owner registered of the motorcycle to report the same. The question that we are raising is, suppose there was no such loss of license plate. The license plate is intact, the motorcycle is used for the commission of the crime. I assume the registered owner has no liability, just for the record.
He would have no liability, Mr. President, but he has to explain if he lost it, and we don't want that to be the norm for them. Otherwise, they would be trying to say, "Oh, I lost the motorcycle." I mean, he's got 3 calendar days from the date of loss to apply for a new license plate, and if he does not report it within the time provided, the LTO may charge a reasonable delay fee against the registered owner. But I know that the gentleman is assuming that in case he is not aware of the loss and the motorcycle is used in a crime, I guess he will not be liable, provided he is not part of the conspiracy, Mr. President.
Now, what about Buck Rider, who was a Buck Rider when a crime was committed? Does he incur any liability?
If he is part of the commission of the crime, yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, certainly if he's part of the commission of crime. But suppose he can show that, so the question is, being a rider per se is not a punishable offense.
Well, under the Soto Amendment, Mr. President, persons committing a crime through or with a back rider shall be punished with a penalty of, like I said, could be depending on whether it results in death or serious physical injuries, Your Honor. But if he's a back rider while the crime is being perpetrated, he would have to be charged as part of the crime.
I have my serious misgivings about that, Mr. President. My question is, so therefore, the mere fact that you are a back rider makes you a criminal?
Well, the back rider is not a criminal unless he is riding the motorcycle, Mr. President, and if he knows, and it can easily be seen that if the shooter is a is the driver, the back rider should either push the motorcycle down, stop it under his duty to protect others. We should not exempt him from not performing his duty. And I guess there could be a presumption that he is part and parcel of the crime because the custom is the back rider is always part of the crime, Mr. President.
We have serious reservations about that
I'm
theory.
sure you have. And I agree
Mr.
with you.
President, I would object to, in the absence of proof that the back rider was a conspirator or aided in the commission of the crime, that he should be punished by simply being a back rider. I don't think that can stand scrutiny, and I would really have problems with that kind of system.
Well, that we are open to amendment. Although I agree with the gentleman per se, the point is it's very hard to be a back rider and not know that somebody is going to be assassinated. And just because he's a back rider, it should not exculpate him. I think maybe we could have an amendment that the burden of proof is for him to say that he's not part of the crime.
But that is assuming, that is putting in reverse our system of criminal justice.
But
you
there is a
assume
crime
me
being
to be guilty,
perpetrated.
and I have to prove my innocence
Yes,
by
Your
being a
Honor.
back rider.
I agree with you, but that, like I said, that is my gut feeling on that. But however, that is why it is important that we make sure that the back rider is aware, even if it is not, I know this is forcing the issue, if the back rider is aware that when he rides a motorcycle, with somebody he doesn't know or somebody he knows is a criminal or something like that, he should not ride it. Of course, it doesn't, there's no, it is his right to ride as a back rider.
Well,
But I'm looking for a way upon which he could not use that as an excuse to exculpate himself. Maybe the gentleman
How
can help.
about imposing a duty to report?
That is part of it, Your Honor. It should be part of it.
Yeah, but that is after the fact.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
But the mere fact that you are a backrider should
Yes,
not
sir.
in itself constitute a crime.
Yes, sir. It's your failure to report. You're witnessing the commission of a crime. Maybe that could be a solution.
That we can add that, Your Honor, and I thank the Senate President for that. But I also would like to say, supposing now the backrider and the driver has a gun, and they're stopped at the checkpoint, and they have a gun, and the backrider doesn't have a gun, but the backrider could very well know that he has a gun. He could be an accessory. He could be an accessory, wouldn't he?
Well, Mr. President, I hope that the gentleman sponsor can review this and probably present, and if there is some basis to amend this in order to cover all of those situations.
We
which
will
you
do that, Your
cited.
Honor.
Now, what about the driver? In a situation where I am the motorcycle driver and I have a backrider who I didn't know was going to shoot somebody, and suddenly that happens while I was driving, do I incur any liability?
Well, if we know the fiscals of this country, they will charge them both. But he would have to protect himself by saying, I had nothing to do with it, I have no knowledge of it. The guy I just picked him up and he just shot. And then he would have to prove his innocence, Mr. President. They would have to prove his guilt, rather.
What? I'm sorry?
They would have to prove his guilt. The fiscal would have to prove his guilt, of course. But of course, for the shooter, there's no question.
So in other words, the mere fact that a crime is committed with where the backrider commits the offense doesn't necessarily make the driver a criminal or liable for punishment of imprisonment unless it is shown that he somehow conspired or that he qualifies as an accessory to the crime. The mere fact that he was driving should not be in itself a crime unless shown by evidence that he indeed had a participation in the commission of the offense.
I'd like to adopt that liberal view, Mr. President, but my ideals are weaker, are strong, I mean, if you really come down to it, any prosecuting lawyer would find it hard to believe that the driver didn't know that he was going to be shot. After all, when he overtakes somebody and the guy suddenly shoots at somebody, he would know. He must know, because he has to position the motorcycle in such a way that they have a shot. And that to me is a matter of God. Although I would tend to agree with the gentleman, and this is not playing politics, that somebody by riding a motorcycle, not knowing that his backrider is going to shoot somebody, or is probably directed, dali mo ako doon, unahan mo na, nagmamadali ako, and he shoots somebody, then again, any prosecuting attorney would still file a case against both of them. The gentleman is a former Secretary of Justice, and I know he knows the temperament of many of our prosecuting officials, and he will probably do that. He will probably recommend that. But of course, it's kind of difficult. As far as lawyers are concerned, the general rule is if he's not part of it, then he will have to be, he doesn't have to be liable right away.
So just for the record, there is nothing here in the law which says that the mere fact that a crime is committed in this particular case by the
Backrider or driver.
by that fact alone makes the driver liable unless shown by competent evidence that in fact he knew, he conspired, he failed to, he acted as an accessory, unless they are separately proven, then the mere fact that you are a driver of the motorcycle should not make one a criminal. That's all that we're saying. It's all in accordance with our, with the due process.
I agree with that, Mr. President.
Now, Mr. President, Can we have the title of the bill again? All right. An act penalizing and preventing the use of motorcycles, etc., etc., etc. Now, is the use of the motorcycle an aggravating circumstance in this case?
Yes, Your
What
Honor.
is being penalized, Mr. President? The failure to use a larger license plate or the use of the motorcycle in the commission of the crime, or both?
Both, Mr. President.
Now, is that consistent with the requirement that the bill should only have one title?
One subject.
Yes, one subject?
One subject.
Sorry? That it should only have one subject?
Well, by and large, Mr. President, the use of a motorcycle or a vehicle is already penalized as an aggravating circumstance in the revised penal code. So really, the onus here is on the plate number. So it really is, in that sense, both, but in reality, when you use a motorcycle and not use the prescribed plate numbers, then you are committing indeed a very punishable offense, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, this is a special law, and therefore there is no occasion to use aggravating circumstance, which imposes 1 degree higher. It's aggravating in a general sense that we would like to think, rather than a specific technical meaning under the revised penal code. But again, I go back to my question. If this penalizes the failure to use the larger license plate once it is available, and punishing by life imprisonment when a motorcycle is used to commit a crime, the question that I raise, and I hope the sponsor can satisfy us for the record that this is not so, doesn't this violate the principle that the title of the bill should have only one subject?
Far be it is the intention of this representation, Mr. President, to have a two objective law, in the sense, I think there is no, I would like to commend the gentleman for being very prescient. This law will survive it by simply saying the failure to use bigger plate numbers, Mr. President. Because after all, this is a special law, if you will, but I would imagine they would still be covered by the revised penal code in the use of motorcycles if murder has been committed, Mr. President. So there will be, I suppose, somewhat of a choice. So I can adjust this, Mr. President, saying not penalizing and preventing the use of the failure of to use bigger plate numbers and identification marks for all motorcycles and scooters.
Well, Mr. President, I will not lengthen this interpellation. May I just request that the sponsor consider the arguments we have raised. If it is valid, we shall be eagerly awaiting the committee amendments, and with the permission of the chamber, we would like to raise questions once the amendments are introduced, if any, in order to satisfy us and satisfy the chamber that indeed the issues that we have raised are addressed in the committee amendments.
Let me just say for the record, my thanks to the gentleman from Iloilo, Mr. President. The arguments are indeed very positive and very helpful in the crafting of good law, and that's why we're a Senate. And I can assure the gentleman from Iloilo that we are going to make the necessary measures as recommended by him. I consider it good recommendations, Mr. President, and amplification of for a very successful and better law, Mr. President. And I thank the gentleman from Iloilo for that.
Because really, we may looking at the two titles, I find difficulty combining them without violating the single subject matter on the title. But that's a matter that we request the gentleman to address, and at the appropriate time when the amendments are introduced, we will re-examine this again and propose questions if necessary, or propose amendments if necessary, in order to remove this vagueness or this possibility of the law being held unconstitutional because it fails to follow the single subject matter rule in the title. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank
With
you.
assurances that we will address those concerns, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1397.
Is there any objection? There being a motion is approved.
We'll schedule the same measure, perhaps in the period of amendments by tomorrow, perhaps, Mr. President. In the meantime, I move that we proceed to the additional reference of business.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Secretary, go ahead.
Bills on first reading. 1451, an act strengthening the military and uniformed personnel pension system, creating the Military and Uniformed Personnel Insurance Fund, amending Section 3 and 24 of Republic Act Number 8291, and for other purposes, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Government, Corporations, and Public Enterprises, National Defense and Security, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1452, an act authorizing the court to require community service in lieu of imprisonment for the penalties of arresto minor and arresto mayor, amending for the purpose Chapter 5, Title 3, Book 1 of Act Number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code. Senator Richard Gordon.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
Thank you. Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
may I move to elect the following Senate contingent to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of the Anti-Hospital Deposit Act, Senate Bill 1353. The chair is Senator J.B. Ejercito, and members are Hontiveros, Binay, Villanueva. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the named senators are hereby elected to the said Bicameral Conference Committee.
Mr. President, just for manifestation, Senator Villar has been officially designated by Senator Alan Peter Cayetano to act as the presiding chair to hear and sponsor all pending measures on the Committee on Agrarian Reform that pertain to agriculture and agrarian reform credit condonation. I understand that the Committee on Agrarian Reform and the Committee on Agriculture will call a joint public hearing on the measure this week. That's why they would like to manifest that for the record, Mr. President.
So the manifestation is noted.
Thank you. Mr. President, may I manifest for the record also the change in referral, or move for the change of referrals, Senate Bills number 932 and 982, both amending the Anti-Red Tape Act, authored by Senator Ralph Recto and Panfilo Lacson, respectively, from the Committee on Civil Service, Government Organization, and Professional Regulation to the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, to be consolidated with Senate Bill number 1311 under Committee Report 33, or the ease of doing business. The senators mentioned have already been informed of the move, Mr. President. So,
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President,
Go
if the
ahead, sir.
Majority Leader will permit.
yes, Mr. President.
Are the changes in the referrals consistent with the jurisdiction of the different committees as defined in our rules? Just for the record.
Yes, Mr. President, as manifested by the letters of Senator Subiri, Senator Trillanes, and consultation with the Rules COMSEC. They are inconsistent, Mr.
With the
President.
rules. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that,
So is there any objection to the change of the referral? There being none, so SB 932 and 982 are now referred to the Committee on Trade as a primary committee.
Yes, as primary
As
committee.
primary committee. So approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, May 16, 2017.
Is there any objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, May 16, 2017.